Hey there, thanks for joining us at the Rabbit Hole of Research, where you'll learn a few facts that you can impress your friends with at a party.
All right, here we are down in the basement studio.
Hello.
Another episode of Rabbit Hole of Research, episode 11.
Is that what we are?
You're in 11, yeah.
Oh, damn.
11. Double digits last week, and now we'll be in double digits for a while. Like, you know, you're single digits for like 9. And then after that, I realized it the other day. I was like, we were all excited last week, double digits. And I'm like, man, we're going to be in double digits like for a while.
The easy part was the first 9 episodes.
Right.
And then
that's the hard part there.
I mean, technically, this is my double digits episode. Like,
That's right. You weren't on the first one.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
You guys decided to not know me at that point.
We talked all about time travel last week, so last episode, and that was it. So,
well, hey Joe, you hear another voice with us, right?
Well, I haven't heard it yet.
You haven't? I've heard some giggles.
People are watching the video.
Hello.
Well, we do have for episode 11 here, which is on cloning. We do have a guest. Go ahead and give yourself a little shout out.
Oh, my name is Jordan Miller. I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm a moonlighting astronaut, any various number of things. I'm an amateur pretend gardener to grow my own food.
I know how you
feel like self-sustainable.
Yeah, no. Well,
Joe has a whole book.
Country
Did you know?
Wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I've been told. I'm very excited about it, to be honest.
That's right. Zombie. Well, my zombie survivals based on Country Wisdom. But this is all about cloning, not zombies. That was a few episodes ago. We talked about zombies.
A few episodes ago.
That was in single digit episode.
Back in the single digits. So
cool.
long ago.
So yeah, cloning's a fun one. A lot of movies. We have Jurassic Park's probably the most famous of all the cloning movies with its faults, and maybe we'll touch upon some of those. But yeah, and then Star Wars, where Jason, he really is excited about Star Wars. And
it's not his name.
Jason, the other guest here are you going to say something, Jason?
No, I mean,
gosh.
man, I come from a world, man, where if somebody got close to my name, I was like, that's good enough.
I don't know why. Oh, sorry, Jordan.
No, it's all right. Yeah, no, I brought a plethora of Star Wars cloning information, and I'm
gonna have to edit that, cut that.
No,
out.
that
can't cut it now, man.
That stays in. I'm going to bring it up
too
later.
Good of humor.
Yeah, look what I have on my right there. my notes. Cloning, episode 11, cloning guest Jordan Miller. It's right here. I mean, just read off the script. Don't be like Nick, who doesn't.
Hey, improv's not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
Is that what we're calling what I do? Thought it was just me being dumb.
You're the master of improv. Don't let Nick fool you. That's his background.
Oh, yeah. Master at doing nothing.
That Second City and all that. Yeah. Or is that's your clone?
That was my clone.
That's your clone. Yeah, no. So cloning, I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, you can clone. Probably the most famous clone is Dolly.
Yeah.
That was a sheep, right?
That was a sheep, right. And that was a big deal. That was the first mammal, I believe. That was
yes.
Put that in the show notes. But yeah, it was there. Frogs was the first.
I guess because the thing that I saw was, because I was looking at some more stuff today, was like, I think like the order of it with like living, sort of beings like that was like, it was tadpole, then frog,
that's right.
And then it kind of ran down into
the frogs were that was Robert Briggs and Thomas King in the 50s cloning frogs.
So it's been around that long.
It's been around that long, right? And if you include plant cloning, you can actually go back a little bit, more with, cloning orchids. So really, a cloning is just making a duplicate or a genetic copy. Let's go with this. Let's set up definition, a genetic copy of the original. So if you do that, so asexual reproduction of plants, essentially you're cloning. So if you take a plant, you break it off, you can, kind of air root it, stick it in dirt, and you grow another plant exactly like that one. That one is essentially a clone of the original.
Yeah,
right?
so that kind of like brings me almost to sort of like a point of topic is like, would you consider then like propagation of plant parts, like, like cutting off a branch, putting it in dirt and it regrowing? Would that be a similar process or something under that sort of same definition?
That would be a clone. I would consider that a genetic copy.
Okay.
And in agriculture, that's done a lot. The bananas, they don't reproduce sexually.
Right.
Because they don't have seeds in them. so they can't. Plants have sex. People don't realize that.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah,
do. So
yeah.
they
Whoa,
get busy.
Joe, I thought we were a G-rated show.
It is. I mean, talking about that, that's PG-13. I mean, that's so there is some history. There's some real, so the kind of real life taking it and how that's done. So kind of the steps, the frogs, that one was done taking nuclei out of embryos. They were already on their way to become an organism. Right. And so once you have an embryo, multi-cellular organism, and so they took nuclei from out of the cells and put those into a denucleated embryo somewhere else, and then grew it up and said, aha, look, we can clone many of these now. And so from the one, embryo, you can make many frogs, which are genetically identical.
Right.
So question, would they not be able to reproduce together then?
They can, yeah. I mean, they'll be sexually, right. No. So if it's a male, they all be male. They're all female, they all be female. So you amphibians can switch sexes. I mean, if we're going to go down that path, but
right.
Yeah. But generally, you're right. If you have a genetic male or female, then when you clone it, it will be genetically male or female because the sex chromosomes come along with it for the ride.
I wish I had written it down when I saw it because I was like, oh, that's a good idea, but I'm smart enough to remember this information by the time I get here tonight, and it's gone. But there's some type of animal that reproduces asexually, and they only produce female. I forget what it is exactly, but everything that gets reproduced from it is a female.
Is it a salamander?
It might have been. I think it was some sort of lizard. I feel like.
Well, why are you thinking I'm going to go? The last step of cloning, like one of the big things. So that's those are kind of a reproductive cell cloning, where you take a reproductive state and then clone from there. The other one is somatic, and we talked about that a few episodes ago in the mutant episode. And somatic cells are everything that's non-reproductive. So skin cells, intestine cells, eyeball cells. And so the cool thing there was you could take just a nucleus from that cell and put it back into a denucleated cell and then kind of use that to clone from there. So that's how Dolly was created, was that type of technology. And that was the big jump. Pet cloning, things like that, they're all cloned that way in that technology. So that's the process of kind of cloning in a state where we're at. And it's kind of, the numbers are, I'm not going to routine. There's still some work and things like that. But,
we're still getting there.
Right.
Parts of
it. We're still a minute away from doing human. But can't we?
You can.
You probably could. I think it's more
parts, right?
It's right. I mean, you start getting the ethical and those types of issues. So there are limits. I think you can't go beyond. You can take mammalian cell lines and then go only so far, and then they have to be destroyed.
You also got the animal is the whiptail lizard or gecko. So it's one particular type that it's just it only reproduces through parthenogenesis.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. I didn't realize that.
Seems like that'd be a cool power for a mutant.
Maybe, I guess. It's clone. Isn't that like wasn't there Multiple Man or something like that?
I think so.
Was that like in a children's superhero alphabet?
I'm pretty
book?
sure that
was there Multiple Man?
I can't remember his name, but there is one that does clone himself into like a million of them.
Right. So I think as you start to, who was it?
Multiple Man.
It was
Multiple Man is real.
Multiple Man. There it is.
Did you look at your notes for that one?
No, I just went on my phone real quick because I was like, is that real? Because I got to know.
Sounds real. If not, we need to make it happen, people. Marvel or DC?
I didn't get that far. I just saw a comic book drawing and saw Multiple Man, and that was enough for me to move right on.
Are you a Marvel or a DC fan, or just Star Wars? I mean,
if I'm choosing between the two, I'm generally going to go Marvel.
Okay. Well, we need to get it.
Yeah.
We got to
I know.
vet the guests if they're, If Jason was here, Jason's a DC fan. But
see, now, as a whole, I like Marvel. My favorite superhero is Batman.
Oh,
but as a whole, I prefer Marvel in general. Even I'm on a bit of a burnout at this point from how much content they're pushing out. I'm like, I gotta
take a little break.
I don't have that much time.
Well, yeah, the Marvel, but the X-Men 97 is out. Yeah. So that's that's a different episode.
You also know that
back to cloning.
This is going to come out so much later than the season's going to be over.
That's right. Yeah, no, we're a little behind, but okay, that's
that's how you push it back.
That's right,
man. You got stuff going.
So cloning, though, in fiction, usually a lot easier. Usually you can use blood or saliva, and so blood is interesting. And the way we described it is you need genetic material. So if you have blood, interesting thing, it doesn't have a nucleus, so it doesn't have DNA in it.
Right.
So if you got blood, you're not making a clone from that because you really don't have the genetic material.
So Jurassic Park lied to me. Is
Gas.
that what you're just saying? I can't believe it.
Just a little bit.
It's so deeply rooted in fundamental science, man.
Just a little bit. Yes. That
This
was
is science that you can get blood from a mosquito.
Right. There's
And
no
you make dinosaurs.
just red blood cells are. They don't have. Now you probably can find maybe some macrophages in there, or like white blood cells. They still have their nuclei. Yeah, but red blood cells, they don't have nuclei in them, so you'll be a little troublesome. And then spit also technology as is, it'll be difficult, like the cell mixture in there. So usually when you do DNA tests, you get cheek cells, not the saliva. So like when you go to do 23andMe or one of those things, you scrape the cheek cells, not spit in the tube, because the genetic material gets a little muddied. You got a lot of other organisms living in your mouth.
Just a lovely sentence.
Let's start there. So as we dive into the fiction, Star Wars and cloning was kind of
What you got for us?
big in there.
Man,
So
I have so much information. Most of it I knew, but I was like, I'm not gonna come and be wrong and get the Star Wars haters all on me, even though it'll probably happen anyways. I know how this fan base operates.
I've got
I've
the
been here
Jurassic
long
Park
enough.
haters after me, so that's
An equally vicious group.
I mean, we're doing things wrong if we don't have at least one angry letter, right?
If somebody's not mad at you, are you really doing it the right way?
No.
That's what it is. I mean, really like cloning as a whole in Star Wars didn't really become a thing until they put the prequels out, specifically with Episode 2, where they went into the introduction of the clone army, the clone soldiers, which was they basically found some sort of plan that was very vague about building an army, and they went to this planet where the Kaminoans were, where they were running basically this cloning business that no one knew about. Really, it was under the nose of the entire Republic. No one knew about it. They sent Obi-Wan Kenobi, the greatest Jedi, to No Arguments to go figure it out and see what's going on, because it was attached to a Jedi Master named...
what about Yoda? Oh,
Yoda,
let's rewind here. It's not all right.
It's a personal preference for me.
You said the greatest Jedi, like, ever.
But he also had like 900 years.
Qui-Gon Jinn. Oh,
that's true.
He's the worst.
Moving
forward, I'm not going to stand for any kind of Qui-Gon Jinn hate.
So you can go a little bit.
He was a man of peace.
The Jar Jar Binks was the theory where he was
that he's a Sith Lord.
Right. So it was like
it's got
Jedi,
water,
but
dude.
It was interesting.
It's
it was
got
like
some water.
That's only because he's from the water.
That's true.
All right, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. This is what it's all about, dude.
Like,
So I mean, basically, like the plot came that there was this Jedi Master, Sifo-Dyas, who had kind of predicted that there was going to be some sort of issue where they were going to need a massive army that they could just replenish constantly. He went behind the backs of everyone, talked to the Kaminoans, said, hey, we need this army. They kind of went through the plans of beginning to build it. Sifo-Dyas got killed by dubious means, i.e. Palpatine and Count Dooku set up a plot to kill him, take over the plans, and then it became a big part of the Republic, basically. They enlisted Jango Fett, the father of Boba Fett, who was a bounty hunter. He was a bounty hunter as well. They used his DNA because he was a Mandalorian warrior. He was had great war tactics. He could fight. He could do all sorts of different stuff. So they felt that same genetic compound, they could use that to create super soldiers, which they did. Like 1 million ready to go and 1 million more on the way.
Now, did they have my memory of that? They didn't have a timeline, did they? So it was like...
No, they kind of just like, as they happened upon it, they had the initial contact with Sifo-Dyas. He died, and then the next time that they heard from anybody was when Obi-Wan came.
Right. But I mean, how long did it take them to go from genetic material to full battle ready?
Yes.
That was 10 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Boba Fett was also a clone, yes? But
Boba Fett was the first clone. They actually called him Alpha.
And he didn't do the speeding in the...
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't have that speeding process because they had the clones develop at twice the speed of a human.
Okay, so they did have...
So by the time they were 10, they were really like 20. Right. But they didn't have Boba Fett do that so that Jango could raise him as a son, because he just he's like, this is the only chance I really got at this.
And then I was bringing it up because I was thinking about that, because that's something that's always missed in a lot of movies, is that usually we're going to clone something, cutscene, 2 months later, it's like a full mature human at the same age as their, counterpart. And there's so genetically you might be the same age because your material came, but you wouldn't be body-wise. You wouldn't go from embryo to adult in like 2 days or 2 months.
Yeah,
so
no, it's they at least put like a somewhat like feasible response to it, of like, they've been doing this for 10 years already, and they're still in this process of continually rolling it out.
They use slight hand waving.
They did a little bit of hand waving.
Yeah.
But they also covered the nature versus nurture kind of issue, because they had the programming.
Right.
Yeah. You were talking about with Boba, that he didn't get that programming. He was allowed to mature with his actual experiences. So the nature versus nurture, it refers to how kind of genetics influences an individual's, personality, whereas nurture refers to how their environment kind of influences them and their decision making. So even though you have a clone, the clone won't have your memories and experiences, and probably never can replicate that. And so you really would have to have a regimented thing that you would go, okay, this clone's going to learn something. So in Star Wars, they said, well, you're going to be a soldier, tactics, things like that. And they were all trained. Yet that also their experiences with each other would influence them somehow. You start to deviate away, and I'm sure maybe you're headed that way. But
that's really about the next path we're headed down. Right.
And plus, that also explains why they're all terrible shots.
Maybe that's why.
So as you kind of started to hit on it with that sort of programming, with the exception of Boba Fett, they put a inhibitor chip in the brains of all of these soldiers, basically, that prevented them from being as like aggressive and just prone to absolute violence that Jango Fett was like, because he was just a bounty hunter. He went out, he was a killer.
Right.
They wanted to be able to maintain a level of control over these highly tactical fighters and not have millions of psychopaths running around through the galaxy.
So we need another million psychopaths.
Exactly. Another million psychopaths in the galaxy.
Then you got to get Thanos to snap them away. Oh, sorry. Different universe.
Technically,
you can now.
They've been.
Don't start putting ideas in people's heads. We'll get it.
Groot knows the Wookiees.
He knows the Wookiees?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
I did not know
I didn't know that either.
That was in the comic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this universe is meshed up.
Yeah.
So, Thanos snapped half of the Ewoks away?
Hopefully.
Oh, 100%.
It's a little sad. You guys don't like the Ewoks?
Well, like when I saw it, it was
Jedi Sith character in the Star Wars universe.
Jedis.
There was just something about being like 9 years old and like watching all this cool stuff happen, and then seeing teddy bears that just kind of made me go.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. Are there any Ewok Jedi?
That I know of. I don't know. I'm sure, possibly anything's a Jedi now.
Cute Ewok Jedi. Wasn't one of the animated series? Was there Ewok?
Yeah, you know what?
In that new kids one.
Yeah, okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if he's an
good
Ewok.
Shot.
What is he?
He's a little bear-looking gimmick.
Yeah, it's got to be. If it ain't an Ewok, then what is this?
If it's not an Ewok, I'm going to call it an Ewok until they give it a name.
We'll throw this in the show notes.
Somebody will know. Someone will know.
Yeah. Someone's going to yell at us.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
But otherwise, they all looked exactly the same. They all looked just like Jango Fett. They talked like him. They fought like him. They were just restricted. They were put in line. They were soldiers. They perfect soldiers that would obey all orders.
Perfect in really loose quotes, right?
During the Clone Wars era, they were pretty good. They handled things. They kept it all in place, and
they had their own personalities. That was in the animated
series, which is where things kind of started to
Bad Batch,
right? And then you get the Bad Batch out of it.
That as you talked about, that camaraderie, that togetherness. They developed the relationships. They weren't given names; they gave themselves names.
Right. Yep.
To differentiate so that they knew each other from each other.
It was probably some of their original. From Jango, that was his defiance and who he was. And
that's kind of been theorized that kind of broke through that that sort of desire, even having been a Mandalorian himself, that desire to try to bring back something from that world. All that went to crap when Order 66 happened, which is really what the chips were also put in for, without anybody else knowing about it, with the exception of just a few of these scientists.
Right.
And it caused all of the clones to turn on their Jedi generals and kill a bunch of them. A lot of people ended up getting away, as we would find out, but they killed a lot of them. They killed most of them, and also at the same time, Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader and killed the rest of them.
Vader, the younglings.
The younglings. Master Skywalker, what are we going to do?
Not the younglings. The Ewok youngling was killed.
Yeah, there you go. That's why you don't
Jedi.
see him.
My favorite Jedi.
The Ewok Jedi.
I can't.
So basically, most of the clones did not get out of that Order 66 process. A few did. They were able to disable the chips through various means. Captain Rex, who's probably the most well-known, the one that runs with Ahsoka, the captain of the 501st Division, he got out of it and remained, and was actually allegedly in Return of the Jedi on Endor.
Interesting.
Because there's like shots that people have of a guy who looks real similar to Tamura Morrison, and they're like, is that him? And I think somebody within the thing was like, yeah, it's him. And then we accepted his lore, because that's what you do. And then, of course, as we mentioned a little bit with like Clone Batch 99, the Bad Batch, their inhibitor chips never worked because they were already, essentially considered broken.
Right.
They weren't supposed to make it. But, we get into, from that point, the Imperial era. Palpatine's taken over. Everything is now the Empire. Then they begin to actually phase out clones, because these clones, they have this rapid aging. They get old faster. They die faster.
Right.
You got to keep replenishing this army. And they found that it would be less expensive, use propaganda to enlist people throughout the galaxy. Be like, hey, you army. Saw what those terrible Jedi did. Let's go out and find the rest of them. Join our troops. And that worked better, because they felt that they can control people better than they were going to be able to control these clones, which were quickly gaining autonomy. That obviously became
one
a
of
problem.
The ethical issues with cloning is that the clones will generate their own opinions and feelings and not want to listen to its
just like
master,
children,
right? Just like children, right? Even accelerate it, because even though you accelerate, I mean, they have
their rebellious stage,
right? It just hadn't had it happen when they were at the appropriate age,
right?
So.
Yeah,
I mean, it would still probably be the appropriate age, but they look like they're in their 50s at that point,
right? Yeah.
It looked like a lot. I mean, also for this accelerated growth, like, is that just metabolic? I mean, we had this with the giant animal episode. When you start growing larger or faster, metabolism increases to keep up with that. So how's that right? I mean, there's a lot of hand wavium, I'm sure.
Right.
But
yeah,
it is kind of interesting that they would just continue aging. It wouldn't be a growth factor or something that they could regulate, because I think they did some genetic modification of the original source material.
Yes.
So it wasn't I don't think it was a one-to-one clone. I believe there was some modifications of the genetic material.
Yeah.
Altered, and then
especially
they started
later.
cloning from that. They went forward. So really, it feels like you would have a regulator gene or something in there that you would turn off and on. So you would have growth accelerated, and then at some point go, okay, turn that off, and then they would just age naturally.
Yeah, that would be that would be a good idea. Yeah.
But also, because you're taking a nuclei out, so on the ends of our DNA or a chromosome, something called telomeres, and these caps people feel are related to aging. Mm-hmm. And so these caps there, as you age, they begin to fray and kind of fall apart. And so what they found with Dolly was that the clones had the same genetic age as the original.
Okay.
So when you look at it that way, if you had Django, I don't know how old he was when they took his
about 40s
genetic material, right? So that means that the clones, unless they knew a way to do telomere regeneration or repair, which they didn't talk about, right? I mean, then scientifically, with our knowledge, you would then all the clones start out at 40.
Right.
So you accelerate them to 20 years, they're 60 genetically. And so you would have some issues moving forward, in that case, right? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that definitely does.
Yes, but
these aren't sheep. These aren't the sheep we're looking for.
Yes, these aren't the sheep you're looking for. But so where would that even go in like the cells? Because don't we regenerate cells and everything? Wouldn't that be pushed out?
No. So as
I'm assuming a clone would still regenerate, like if it got injured.
you would have cell division. Each cell division you're going through, you're making a copy, you're making copies of DNA. And as you do that over time, the telomere caps begin to fray, get smaller, get weaker. Progression of aging, that's kind of where it's at, that you have a cellular age, and that's dictated by your telomeres. And I'll put some of this in the show notes because it is kind of fascinating. And you get into cloning. When you clone, how old is that clone really? And
right. Yeah.
It's not a baby. It's actually like cellular. It's a baby via developmental age, but cellular age, technically, it could be older. And
That's
so kind of
it's like it depends on how you view what age is.
Right.
Is it the age of your cells or the age that you sort of almost present as?
Right. So then, can you reverse aging in that way? Which people are working on.
Yeah, like
people are working on that.
I think that's a whole nother episode, right?
That is no aging.
Yeah,
We should go down that one right now.
So yeah,
that one has so many.
No, yeah, we'll touch on that. But yeah, so cloning. So now we're at the point where now regular people, clones are out. Nurture has taken over. There's an interplay. It's not straightforward. There's nature or nurture. These two kind of interact and intersect. So
right.
You have this, and that's really shown there. I mean, they didn't explicitly go, oh, this is what happens when the clone, nature versus nurture. But it is twin studies. You see that a lot where you have the two twins. So this is
for sure.
Twins are freaky, man. Like you see those videos where the twins
I
are
don't know
what
videos you've been looking at, Nick. This is a clean PG-13 show.
They
right?
just hold things up at the same time. They'll put two twins on opposite sides of the table and like have a cardboard thing in front of them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is the same one that they're gonna hold up," and it gets really weird. It's like, "Oh, how do you know that?"
I don't have a twin.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like a twin question.
Yeah, right.
Should we get some twins to ask? I don't know any twins. By the way, quick side note.
Well, when you prefaced it with twins freak me out, I couldn't imagine why you don't know any twins.
Yeah, right.
I used to know twins. I mean, and they did everything like the same.
Right.
It was just so odd.
I'm always afraid I'll mess up their names and just get a lot of people angry
I didn't
at me.
know them. I just referred to them like as a sole entity because they were always together. So I just
bet
referred.
they love that.
Oh well, I mean, everyone did. I mean, like we just called them by their last name and just put an S at the end, and we always knew that they were together.
Right.
By the way, Nubs is a Poobah, that Jedi
really?
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not an Ewok?
No, it says a Poobah.
What's a
Poobah.
like the grand Poobah?
Hey, what's a Poobah?
I don't know what a Poobah is.
I thought you were supposed to.
That's
Joe, you
that's
told me we
a
had
whole
a Star
different
Wars
world
expert here.
That's a whole different. That's an animated show I've never watched, man.
It's outside of the preview. Is it? Do you become a grand Poobah?
I was about to say that. That sounds like a word I actually know.
The Poobah.
Listen, you brought up that he was a Ewok. I figured I'd let you know, so we didn't have to put it in the. I didn't want to have to put this in the footnotes. I'm sorry.
I like to put it in there anyway. Show notes. You got footnotes. We got show notes. I don't know who's keeping track. I hear there's like games people are playing with the number of times we say certain words in the podcast. So yeah, so
I mean, yeah, at that point, I mean, really, we don't know exactly what goes on because there's currently a show that's on right now in the Bad Batch that's kind of telling us what the end of the clones is. For the most part, there's kind of the rumor that there's a clone rebellion against the Empire that inevitably gets shut down very quickly. And then there's just kind of a dark period where nothing really happens, but what was going on was they were doing more cloning. They were using that process that the Kaminoans had perfected and were adding these new Imperial scientists into that frame, and they were creating new things. There was the Tarkin Initiative where they were just going out and finding literally any species and trying to clone it for these clandestine reasons that they had going on. There was Project Necromancer, which was for sent for Palpatine to basically live forever. They wanted to try to find some sort of clone DNA that they could use that would not mess up the midichlorian count. I know that's going to get a lot of hate from people talking about midichlorians, but they needed something that wouldn't have, like, it was as they were going through the process, taking the blood and trying to regenerate it, they were noticing that mixing it with Palpatine's blood was lowering the M count, making them weaker. They wanted them to be stronger.
Right.
And eventually they end up finding something that can sustain that long enough to put him in a body that is weak and decrepit and falling apart. And basically every time he dies, his spirit would leave his body, jump into another clone, and would just wait for that one to degrade, die, jump into another body until they could find something strong enough. As it's explained, the dark side's corrupting the bodies because they just can't handle how evil and how dark he actually is. But it was all just cloning. They just kept cloning the body over and over again and reinserting his spirit into it so that he could continue to live until he could regain full power and inevitably reinstitute the Empire.
So I think you kind of answered my question, where you can clone a Sith or Jedi to an extent.
To an extent, we still don't exactly know what it is, because like Bad Batch is like literally explaining all of this right now. So it's like I'm learning in real time, but where they're kind of at right now, spoilers for people who haven't watched it, is they've found this one particular clone, Omega, who her blood doesn't degrade the M count of this donor. This donor we don't know. It's Palpatine.
Sort of midichlorians, are they genetic?
Yes.
Right?
It's so the midichlorians, when they were introduced in episode 1, is basically something that's in your blood, in your DNA, that allows you to have a greater ability to manipulate the Force. So like when they tested Anakin's blood in episode 1, when he was a kid, he had the highest midichlorian count that they'd ever seen. This kid's super powerful, and he doesn't even know what the Force is.
Right.
So it's a part of the genetic material.
Okay, so you can't clone it then.
So you can clone it, but they're like, what I think the problem that they're facing is that they can't keep it at the same level or make it even more powerful. They're just adding something to it that dilutes it every single time. And they've only been able to now find one donor that can keep that midichlorian count high
at the same
or
level.
Better.
Interesting. Have they isolated the gene?
That's kind of what I think that is that they're
that's what
doing.
They're trying to do.
Yeah, is they're trying to just to figure it out how to make it,
do gene
sustain
therapy.
it. And,
Why are you working for the
Empire, man?
Yeah, dude. Like,
I'm just asking questions.
This is private information.
I'm just
I don't need stormtroopers knocking on my door at 3 a.m., man.
Asking the good questions and moving forward.
But I mean, so that's kind of really all that there is in terms of cloning, because the last thing that we really know of is them continuing to clone Palpatine over and over and over again until Rey and company destroyed him, spirit and all, allegedly,
for good.
Until we need to bring Ian McDiarmid back for more things
and take his blood and can't make any clones with that. They're like, this is useless, throw it away.
So you can make a clone out of a clone, right? Or is that
sure? Why not?
No, they ended up specifying that they can't.
Well, there's nothing really stopping you from making a clone out of a clone. I mean, it's you just get the genetic material, get the nuclei, and then put that into another denucleated, and raise it up.
In the world of plot devices, they had to have something that made the Empire want to turn away from them, and that was basically that Jango's blood that they had donated, they were running out.
That's why they'd say they started with blood. That's we already have a
we have a problem.
That's like Jurassic Park. I mean, we start out with some fundamental problem.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely from the beginning. But the genetic material, I suppose I should say, was running out, and he was dead, and they didn't know where Boba was, and plus he was also a clone, so they wouldn't be able to use his anyways.
Why not? See, that's the
in the world of plot device.
Or find one of the Bad Batches. I mean, you could find a number of,
There's blood everywhere.
Right. Or you don't want the blood. You want like a little tissue sample. Let's get some tissue, some real meat, and move forward. Not blood.
Sounds like you need to put an application in, man.
Just get one of the clones and just start harvesting it. That's going to be its only job, being harvested.
That's not morally dubious at all.
Just bring them in. Like, hey, we need to take a little biopsy.
Doesn't sound like human farming in any way.
Got an issue here. So just some fun. I always like to. Are you familiar with homunculus?
Yes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This stuff is
100%.
Yeah, it's the best stuff I've ever seen.
In the 1500s, that's how they were explaining reproduction.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are you?
Yeah, I've read up all about this stuff. Yeah, I find it so fascinating.
So it's fun. I mean, it's so the idea was they didn't understand how reproduction really worked. And so you had this idea that the homunculus is at a microscopic but fully formed human would then make its way into the womb and then grow into a larger human.
Yeah. Man.
That's it.
It was like 500 years ago.
And so and then you had like,
Wait, you're telling me this is not true?
this is very true. This is what people, it's not true. Yeah, no. Yes.
No, it happens. It happens all the
There's no
time.
little people. And so you had this whole thing. So then you had, Anton von Leeuwenhoek in like 1677 develop a microscope, and he started studying a lot of stuff. He just would collect his own material. But he looked at like rabbit sperm, saw that,
I'm doing
like,
science in here.
little-
Leave me alone.
he visualized, spermatozoa, and that was like the first time it was seen. And so you had spermists come up with a theory that still supported the homunculus in there. And so they said that the sperm were these animalcules, and these contained, instead of a little person marching in, these would,
A little spaceship.
that's right,
A little
a
magic
little
school
spaceship,
bus.
and they would go. And
This
so
is
yeah,
the
it was-
weirdest episode of the Magic School Bus.
the spermist theory held that the sperm was in fact a little man that was placed inside a woman for growth into a child, and that was their explanation. And so this led to this kind of thing, the homunculus argument, and it's an informal fallacy whereby a concept is explained in terms of the concept itself recursively without first defining or explaining the original concept. So you had this thing, because if you think this all through, then why would the little sperm man from the dad kind of look like the mom or not be a perfect clone? It was kind of, they didn't really have
I like to picture him
Any
in a
idea?
little suit while he's flying this little sperm spaceship.
I mean, I'd highly recommend like looking them up on Google because they are horrifying
and a little
images.
picture,
Dude.
it's a little picture.
It's some.
We'll put
it's,
that in the
know,
footnotes.
we
yeah,
will
it's
put that
it's,
in the
it's
show
some
notes.
spooky stuff, man.
But yeah,
I
so
love this idea. And I now subscribe to this.
I know.
Thank you.
you're gonna have to
like-
make a coffee drink at the shop.
I mean, it's a good name,
The
dude.
homunculus.
It's a good
It's this
name.
little man. It's like a little fully formed, almost like a golem. I mean, if you think
Yeah, they're just little gnomes, dude.
you can leave the spermobile out of it, but that's
No. That's going to be the new cup we use for this. What you got there? Just
And
a
that's what
good
that's
old
like fun. When you
spermobile.
think of like cloning, that was like maybe like, I mean, it was just a way to explain it, but really what they're explaining, cloning, I guess, is that the
In
little
a way, yeah.
that you would.
Without actually doing so, yeah.
Yeah, and no one can see it. I'm making little finger walking kind of in noises. That was like doot doot doot. That was me
No,
doing
is that what
so
that was?
That's what that was. Like doot doot doot.
It's good radio.
Yeah, yes, it is. So yeah, no, but that was really fun, and it's a fun part of history there.
Yeah, I mean, like weird side tangent with that. Like the way that I
mean
discovered that
A weird
was-
rabbit hole.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Weird rabbit hole. I mean, quite literally, it was because I found out about homunculi through watching the anime Full Metal Alchemist. Because there are, because it's watch it. It's in there. They're not represented in the same way. They're represented more with
Nick has a
with
look.
with like the sins and
I
stuff like
watched
that.
it. I just don't remember this.
Oh, dude, yeah.
That's
You'll-
why I'm like,
when you go
wait,
back and
what?
watch it, you'll remember it. You'll be like, oh, but it's not at all like what we're
Now
talking
that you
about
know
here.
what it is,
I'm still
you're going to be like, there
It
it is.
warps your view of it, but I was like, what are these? Because I know, like, with maybe it has something to do with alchemy. So I like Googled it, and of course I ended up in that, and I was like, just like down a rabbit hole of just like, what did I just read
No,
about these little men crawling up inside people and becoming babies?
But you had that. So then this theory gets even better. And was it the perfectionism theory? Because people then started speculating and pointing out that if the sperm was a homunculus, identical in all but size to an adult, then homunculus may have sperm of their own, right? So then you would have this whole
So we're just, it's like a
atomic levels.
it's a nesting doll
This
of
is kind
just
yeah, right.
homunculi all the way down.
Just kind of little men making new littler men. And that's a continuous cycle. Yeah, it's just kind of this the.
I feel like this was like one of those
It's disputing
Ant-Man
science.
theories for him fighting Thanos, no?
Was it? What are we talking about?
I'll tell you that one off air.
All right, yeah, that's, that will be. You guys.
Oh, it
that
took
one.
me a second.
You guys, yes, yeah. Yes, oh
I'm
my
glad you
gosh.
caught that one.
Yeah,
All right.
it took a second, man. And then when it hit, I was, oh yeah.
That was the only thing I was thinking about when he was reading that story.
All right.
Oh, wonderful.
But, cloning, though, speaking of Jurassic Park, coming full circle, the woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
They're talking now 4 years away from the woolly mammoth. Because, the woolly mammoth, they still have, it went extinct on the time frame that there still are carcasses with, flesh, hair. And so they can get suitable genetic material, not the mosquito blood, but they can actually get chunks of tissue from the animal and the source animal, and then start to recover the DNA. The DNA isn't 100% intact, but they are like kind of trying to use
Splice it.
AI and things like that to repair it. And then as a donor, they're going to use, I think, African elephants. So they're going to take the, genetic kind of nuclei and then put that into use the African elephant as a donor, and then grow up these woolly mammoths.
I just feel like it's putting that thing in agony, though, because our climate is completely different from what it used to live in.
There's a whole bunch of issues like what it used to eat,
Right.
where it's going to live. It's you could start going down that.
Also, like, mammoths are big. Like, we use the word for a reason. They're gigantic. Like, what are we gonna do with them? What's the plan?
Look
here?
at that thing.
Put them in zoos, I guess. That's their life. You just come back but you start doing that. You can bring the dodo bird back. I don't know how much source material we have of some of these things. I didn't look that up, and maybe I'll go down and do a little more kind of exploring. But you could bring back all sorts of, the other
Extinct animals.
Yeah, well, the other thing you can do is endangered animals and things that are kind of on the edge or just have kind of been pushed off. Can you? That would make more sense than a woolly mammoth. I just think there's money involved. Probably donors.
Obviously.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's also
They just want to be the first person to be like, hey, I did this.
Well, there was some woman in Texas who paid $50,000 to have her cat cloned.
That's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they just her cat died, they took it and then they made a new one, and it was the same cat. And she claimed that it was had the same personality and all that, which I'm like, that's more of you raise the cat the same way.
Well, you can't. Really, that we touched on it earlier, that you really can't, right?
Right.
Because the same factors that happen. You yelled at the cat, to get off the table, and then that imprinted something. How do you recreate all this history? If you had this cat for 10 years, how do you recreate all of that to get that personality of that cat?
Right.
And so you do have this with the clone. That's why in Star Wars they were smart, because they took it and they had this this video that they made them watch, or this training regimen. But you still have the camaraderie and interactions with other people, the other clones. And so that would still influence them. And you can't control that, because we're here with clone 1 to 100, and you're with clone, 200 to 300, and so on and so forth. They would all be influenced differently, because the clones would talk about different things. They would observe different things. They would visualize and have experiences that you can't control for as you go out. And so I think even though you have these training kind of things, I believe that would still be kind of problematic. And with pets, that's the big issue, is that even though you can get the donor material from the original pet, you can find a similar breed to kind of be the surrogate, because we don't have artificial wombs yet. Kind of an interesting rabbit hole to go down. Mm-hmm. And so you have to use a donor animal. You still won't, and that's even fascinating. So when you use kind of, a donor animal in there, you then start talking about epigenetics. And so you could have imprinting. And so the donor animal could then imprint onto the genetic material, regulate or downregulate genes in particular ways.
Right.
That would go to the donor animal and not the original. So, it's a complicated thing to come, this is the same exact. Now, is it just a cat acting like a cat? Okay, I got that. But is it the same personality of a cat? Or if you clone a person, will they have the same personality? And that's where you start getting into, fun science fiction.
Right. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, I think we've all had that discussion of like, if they cloned me and brought me back, would I be the same me?
You wouldn't be you at all. Then.
Yeah, no, you'd be a totally different person. Just you might look like me, or you have the same genetic makeup that I have, but we've had different experiences. We were raised different ways. We were put in different, situations. Yeah. So no, you're not me, or that's not me.
It's a fun movie. They clone Tyrone. Did you guys?
Yeah,
on Netflix. Yes, they kind of.
I have not seen that, but I passed it yesterday. I think, and I was like,
it's really good.
I should watch that.
With Jamie Foxx and. Yeah, it came out, I think, last year. Yeah, it was pretty fun movie about that and kind of going through in that cycle. And then a book that I liked is Never Let Me Go. I'll throw all these into the show notes. But that whole book, well, I don't want to. I go read the book. I got yelled at about spoiling stuff, but it's a good book. I'll put
as long as you put spoiler in front of it, you're safe.
I don't know. I got yelled at about 20, 30-year-old movies in the last episode.
That's a time. There's a time.
That's what I said.
But then you're reintroducing it to a new audience
that
wouldn't have seen it. I think that's where, like, all right, there's a time period. But then if you go past that, then you're also entering a new era of, this whole generation that you're trying to get to watch something. Well, you've already ruined that.
That's super fair. I didn't think about it.
What if it's your clone? Can you ruin it for your clone?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
you can ruin everything for that.
All right. What are you drinking over there?
I don't know.
We didn't talk about that because I'm kind of getting there.
Disco Grandpa
from Crushed by Giants.
Are you drinking the same thing?
I am drinking the same thing. We are twinsies. Clones.
I mean, sure. we're halfway there.
Depends on how you define it.
That's like twins, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, right?
Yeah,
that's a
movie, dude.
Spoiler, they were genetic twins.
So, Joe, what's your favorite cloning movie?
Oh, my favorite cloning movie. Let's see. I mean.
If you don't have one on the spot, we'll jump over to Jordan.
I'm just going to go
I think we know what his is.
I mean, I would go with Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
I really I enjoy Jurassic Park even though it has its scientific flaws, but just
none, right?
You didn't say the magic word. You didn't say the magic word. No, I think it was super fun. I like they cloned Tyrone. That's a new one. I thought that was a lot of fun, a little different. No, those are a couple there.
Now to break up the monotony of talking Star Wars, I will bring up a different movie. So there's a movie from I think it's like the early to mid 2000s. It's called Moon.
All right, I saw that. Yeah.
That is a fantastic movie.
I didn't see it. It came up on my list, but
I actually recently rewatched.
Well, yeah,
and had forgotten that it was a cloning movie. And I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah, I forgot all about that.
It's a great movie, especially coming into it having forgotten so much of it because I hadn't watched it probably since I was like 16 or something. So I mean, I just forgot so much, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a great movie.
Yeah,
no, I got to check that.
And handles the whole cloning thing really in an interesting way without spoiling it.
Yeah. Don't spoil it.
And for real, don't spoil it. Go watch the movie, please. If you haven't seen it, watch it if you have seen it, as a matter of fact.
We'll put that in the show notes. Nick, what do you got?
I'm going to go Flubber. Yeah, wild card over here.
Yes.
That thing.
Very wild cardy.
It clones itself. It makes a whole room full of itself.
It does.
Was Gremlins, Gizmo? Didn't he get cloned?
Yeah.
The water
Yeah.
splashed on him. But they weren't actually clones.
I don't think that's cloning. That one's.
But they were genetically himself, right?
I mean,
right?
But it was asexual. I watched the movie a lot, and so he got wet, and then little blisters popped off, and you got the other gremlins. I guess they were the gremlins.
Yeah.
But they were genetically. I mean, it should have been genetically identical. I don't know how that works.
We can't confirm it, but I mean,
we gotta get some 23andMe on those gremlins.
I don't know, because I figured that was its way of reproducing.
Yeah, but it's asexual.
Is it? It's with water.
Okay, let's move along. I don't know what's in your water, but there's no homunculi. Right?
Yes, you get in touch with the town, bud.
I'm just saying that it's the water that's making that one.
I think it was. They were kind of angry genetic replicants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's
Yep. Yeah. I think they were clones. I don't know. We got to have a Gizmo expert on.
Yeah, get a hold of Steven Spielberg for us, would you?
Get him on the phone. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, Steve,
Steve, good buddy.
got a comment from
Right.
a movie about 40 years ago. bud.
Well, I am at the end of my tasty disco grandpa.
I finished one of my 3 drinks.
Yeah. You did have a lot of drinks over there.
It's a real liquid.
So, yeah.
That's why I'm sounding a little wet today.
Any last thoughts on cloning? I mean, I'm sure we'll probably revisit it. There's some stuff even in my notes I didn't get to.
Honestly, cloning gets so wild. Like, the amount of actual research that has been done about it is nuts.
Since the 50s, right? And then even before with plants,
Yeah.
Dolly, pets, woolly mammoths soon come marching down the street. All right, I think we can wrap this one up on cloning.
I got nothing
Jordan,
else,
you got
yeah.
something? You want
Yeah,
one more
Jordan,
plug? Are you
nothing
playing
else.
somewhere? Are you?
Yeah,
have a
actually,
show?
I am. I am
this is
playing music. So,
Got to go out a little bit, or some website we can find you, or Facebook.
for sure. I mean, if you just look up my name, Jordan Miller, Jordan.
You sure your name isn't Jason, or is that your
You know what? We're gonna peel the curtain back a little bit to my childhood. My parents were originally going to name me Jason.
You're probably the clone.
And
That's
then my mom's friend named her kid Jason right before I was born, so they had to scramble for a new name. And,
What's another J name?
That's
yeah,
it,
and
right,
that's
yeah.
what it was. And they had to listen. It was this one, so I'm like, and I prefer this. I don't want to be
Yeah.
Jason. I know too many Jasons.
Yeah, I do. I know quite a few Jasons. Good friend, Jason.
I'm nothing wrong. Nothing wrong
I know.
with the name.
Don't be talking bad about Jason.
I'm
there.
not talking bad. Just saying I like having my name. But yeah, JORDANMILLER. Look me up on Spotify. I got some sad songs for everybody to listen to. Good little sad folk songs.
We'll throw those links into the
For sure.
Show
For sure.
notes.
I'll get it.
Footnotes, yes.
And
Glad you
if you're in the Northwest Indiana area, the last Sunday of every month, I will be playing from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., not the other way, at the St. John Farmers Market.
Nice.
So, have a bunch of people coming out selling their stuff. I'm going to be there playing some music. It's free. Come hang out.
mention this podcast, you get a free grape.
Absolutely. I will. Hey, man, I grow food. If you come up, you mention a podcast, and it's the right season, I might give you a tomato.
There it is. You heard it here. Get a tomato.
You get 3. I'll bring
Rabbit
3
hole.
tomatoes to the shows, and if you
Great
come up, you mention
tomatoes,
the
there it
pod, you
is.
get a tomato. Only got 3.
All right.
They're scrambled in this pocket.
So I
Hey,
think
that's just how you make tomato sauce, man.
I mean, the best kind. That's how I've had it back in the old country.
That's
I think we just
close it down. I'm Joe. We got Nick. We got Jordan here, and
that's that hole.
we'll see you later in the rabbit hole of research, people.
Good night.